I am Roberto Baldwin, Senior Editor at Engadget, and I am here with Christoph von Hugo. He is the Head of Active Safety at Daimler. And today we're going to talk about, the intelligent world drive that Mercedes just finished. It's 5 months, correct?
Yes, right. We just returned from our trip around the world. Started last September in Germany, went over to China, Australia, South Africa, and now the car just drove up from Los Angeles up to Las Vegas a few days ago. And so now we've concluded our Intelligent World Drive.
Wonderful. And now the World Drive was to help Mercedes figure out how you would have to basically regionalize your autonomous driving system. So today we're going to talk about how in America, an autonomous system is going to have to be different than it is in China, that is in Australia. And what was sort of the big takeaway of that?
Well, of course, we had a clue before that driving is not the same all over the world. We just wanted to make sure that we didn't miss out on any of the challenges that we might encounter later on. So this was kind of a front-loading exercise in order to figure out what is it we really have to take into account when we're designing a level 3, level 4, level 5 car. Because you don't want to encounter any challenges really close to mass production. So you want to know upfront what you have to take care of in your software architecture, in your system setup, in your safety concept. So, of course, we were not really surprised by the things we saw, but we gathered quite a lot of important data, different road signs, different infrastructure, different driving behavior. If you're driving only on German autobahns or American highways, you don't see a lot of pedestrians. If you go out to South Africa, that's something different. And if you ever want to launch an automated vehicle in South Africa, well, then you should be capable of dealing with pedestrians running over the highway. So some of those things, as I said, were not surprising to us, but they reconfirmed that we really need to look into real-world driving situations, because we don't want to design a level 3 car that just goes up and down the strip here in Las Vegas. It's supposed to help people in everyday driving, so we need to go where our customers are and drive like they do, so that we can actually build something that helps them in everyday driving.
Right now, you've done the drive. Where do you see the current state of AI as it relates to this drive, and just in general, just feeding all this data into your vehicles?
Well, it's easy to gather a lot of data. In the test vehicle we've used during the drive, and needless to say, we've got more of them running in other parts of the world as we speak. We were monitoring 60,000 signals continuously. So depending on the environmental situations, that was about 12 gigabytes of data per minute. So gathering data and filling your hard disks, that's pretty easy. But then making something out of the data, that's a hard part. So now the actual work for us starts to look at the data, figure out which one's the more important one and which ones we don't really need. We don't care about driving 2,000 miles straight ahead on a freeway. That's not interesting. We have to figure out what are the important situations. And we can, of course, automate that processing, but some of it has to be done manually. And then we take that data, we pre-process it, and then we start to develop our next generations, our automation system, and we re-simulate how the next generation software would deal with those situations. So gathering the raw data, keeping the important one, and then re-simulating. That's an iterative process, which we will keep on doing until we launch a vehicle.
And can you elaborate a little bit on the simulation? Like, do you just put the car in a simulated environment and run it 1,000,000 miles, 1,000 miles, run it through an event 1,000,000 times? How does that work?
Yeah, pretty much just like you explained.
And I'm assuming that at some point you have the simulations, and there's always the ones we think of: car crossing in front of you, the kid with the ball that's it comes out into the street. When you're doing a drive like this, the World Drive, or just regionalized driving and training, I'm assuming you come into a lot of situations that no one would have thought of. That just
yes, certainly. A lot of situations you may have even thought of before, but you've never looked at them through the eyes of an autonomous vehicle. So just as you explained before, things that may come natural to us as humans may not come natural to an automated vehicle. So now you have to come up with solutions how to deal with it.
As we're training the cars, it's kind of like when people started driving. There were things you were comfortable with, maybe riding on the freeway, maybe merging. But there are some things, maybe a U-turn was difficult. So you avoided it until you were able to try it out in a safer situation. Is that?
Exactly. First of all, try to figure out whether you're allowed to do a U-turn or not. Mm-hmm. Try to read that sign, which is hard enough the way it is, even for me. Mm-hmm. And then secondly, come up with a rule how to deal with it. And if you can't deal with it, well, then try to avoid it.
And a little bit more about the regionalization. Let's talk about right turn on red. Mm-hmm. In California, you can right turn on red unless the sign says don't take a right turn on red. Mm-hmm. But in other states, you can't. You can only take it if you see it. Mm-hmm. So how, as a company, as an automaker, how do you sort of figure that out? Do you have to geo-fence the cars?
Yeah, that's pretty much what we are doing already. We know very well where we are driving. And there's different ways of figuring out. Either you just know where the car has been sold. There's some parts in the world where it's easy because you live on an island in Australia. Well, that car's not going to leave Australia. Yeah. That's pretty certain. Well, if you live in Europe, that's something different. Well, then you're just looking at the GPS data, which you usually have in a car, and then you know when you've crossed the border. And last but not least, you can help take your environmental sensing system, for example, your camera, and for instance, if I'm driving from Germany to France, after a while my camera will know that it is in France because all the symbols or the street signs look different.
How important is mapping for level 4, level 3 through level 5 driving?
Well, we will not be able to fully rely on mapping. It's depending on the kind of use case you have. Of course, you can design a certain system just to work in a geo-fenced area, and then what you can do is make sure that within that geo-fenced area, you know all the streets and you keep them updated, so your map is of very high accuracy all the time. Mm-hmm. But if you design a level 3 system, say that you want to work everywhere in the United States, well, then you cannot really make sure that you have all the best data all the time. Mm-hmm. So we will also try to make the vehicle as self-reliable as possible.
Give an example of how much data a car pulls in.
Well, just to give you an idea of only looking at the camera, just rough number, it's about 1 DVD full of data every minute. So that's the raw data it sees. Mm-hmm. That needs to be processed, and now that's only one sensor, and that's actually one of today's cameras. If I'm looking 5 years into the future, it's going to be tenfold that one. So it is a lot of processing power, but of course, the acceleration of IT and calculation power is helping us out with that. But still, it's one of the things we have to do as engineers, come up with smart ideas how to reduce the data up front, throw away what you don't need, and only look at the important data. And that's something that experience will help you with.
I love driving. That is one of my favorite things to do. I despise commuting, because commuting is not driving.
Depends on where you live, though. but
I'm talking about the gridlock, the LA, the San Francisco, the New York. You're just...
Yeah, but I totally agree. Automation does not mean that we won't allow for manual driving. I'm absolutely convinced that we will see a coexistence of different levels of automation, all the way down to a level 0, level 1 car, even in the future. Well, I do believe that we will have driver assistance systems in pretty much any car out there because they just improve safety. But if you want to drive manually down highway number 1, you should be able to do that, and many people will still want to do that. But that's why I believe that a level 3 system really makes a lot of sense, because it allows you to have your everyday vehicle, take it out on a holiday trip, enjoy driving. But then if you're stuck in commuting traffic, you just by push of a button, you relax, lean back, take your hands away, and watch a movie. So I think that's really, it makes a lot of sense for a lot of people.
Thank you so much. And that's exactly what I'm looking for, by the way.
You'll get it.
Thank you so much for joining us today on this Engadget stage, Christoph. I really, as always, always great talking to you. Always great talking about cars. Stay tuned for more from the Engadget stage at CES 2018.